Good morning. This is Dante Ang, President and CEO of the Manila Times. Welcome to the Manila Times Roundtable. Today we'll talk about the recently held midterm elections and talk to the experts about how it went about and maybe later on looking forward to see how we can improve the system. Let me first introduce our guest, beginning on my left, the chairman of NAMFRA. Welcome, Gus Lagman. From PPCRV, we have Ms. Manabel Buenaobra. And also on my right, Lito Avelia of Ice Watch.
No,
I'm sorry.
NAMFRL
From
also.
NAMFRL also.
Systems Group.
I'm sorry, I am confusing Lito with the triumvirate at the Manila Times. Always writes about transparent elections. Na, no. We also have Ms. Nerilyn Tenorio, our publisher editor, and Arnold Biliaza, our executive editor. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So, Neri, why don't you fire off the first question?
Why don't we start off with an assessment of the May 13 elections? What were the highlights of your observations in the conduct of the elections? We start off with Mr. Lagman.
The first question that I'm always asked, well, in the last few days, no, is what happened during those 7 hours? Because that's a major glitch. I mean, to not see anything, no reports for 7 hours, that's very unusual. So that was the main thing that, to me, as somebody involved in the processing of data, 7 hours is just too long.
But what do you think? It's it's a critical factor. I mean, we wanted to have Nelson here today because his column came out in the Manila Times, and his assessment is the worst. And we were sort of joking before the show. Hindi naman siguro, there are a lot of far worse elections, but I mean, how big of a deal is it? Because I mean, there must have been some redeeming factors. The speed with which we saw the early results, but I know I heard you saying that there are still non-compliance with the law, and there were some technical issues that both you and others have been saying for many years now.
I have always been an advocate of manual counting at the precinct level.
Okay.
Because people must see how their votes are counted. If the moment you automate the precinct counting, then nobody sees how their ballots are counted. I mean, it's like saying, here's my ballot, and then it's brought to a room that's locked, and you don't see what happens to it.
Right.
That's the equivalent.
Okay.
And worse, the people who are counting our ballots are foreigners. So that's even worse. So I've always believed that counting at the precinct level must be manual, so that everybody already has a copy of the election returns. Right. After that, then you can automate everything.
Right. Before we pursue that, Ms. Panibel, what is your assessment?
We cannot make a general conclusion yet because the work of PP survey is not over yet.
It's an ongoing thing.
It's an ongoing thing, and the fact that we are doing our unofficial parallel count with volunteers, encoding and validating the physical election returns and comparing that with the electronically transmitted election returns, then we will find out whether the match is there. There were 4 observations that we had.
Okay.
On the day of election, on May 13th itself, it came right on the day itself. First, you have the malfunction of the VCMs.
Yes.
The second would be the SD cards. Again, malfunctioning and they needed to be replaced. The third is that the biometrics, the voters registration and verification system, VRVS, which is supposed to be pilot tested in 13 cities, municipalities, and provinces. Some of them also were not used.
Okay.
And then all until about 4 p.m. And then at 6 p.m., at 6:15, when we found out, when we noticed on the tally boards, on the PPCRV KBP screen, that the transmissions stopped at 6:15, the fourth one, which later on became the 7-hour glitch, like a blackout on the transmissions, that's when we started to ask the Commission on Elections to provide us with the transparency logs. So that on May 15, we did ask them, on the night itself, we asked them to open the transparency server to political parties and even those who were present in PPCRV. We invited them there. We requested COMELEC that the media, accredited tech media inside the transparency server room, be allowed to witness the troubleshooting, as well as the representatives of political parties. And we requested them, kahit na isang representative lang, as long as they're there, and they would need to see the troubleshooting which happened.
Was that accomplished?
It was accomplished. COMELEC gave us that request because we said they have to be transparent to ensure that the public would know. And then we also asked that we wrote them formally and requested for the transparency logs. And then on May 20, we did come out with a press statement that there were 3 findings that we found out. The first, data was being transmitted during the 7-hour. Second, that it matches the data that was in the transparency server matches that with the COMELEC central server, because we scrape data and compared. But there is something which I think COMELEC has not yet provided us with.
Something bad.
Oh, maraming salamat. No? Data, whether data came in, well, it was not appearing in the tally bars, data came in. Data did come in and it matched. And the third is whether there really was a bottleneck or technical glitch. There was. That was what our IT experts found out. But then our duty is really to look at that and to make a study out of that and analyze. But we need the Commission on Elections to give a technical report.
Right. So
what happened? Because we don't own the server.
Right.
They own the server, so it is but natural
So
that they would provide us with a report, not to us only, not to the media, but
to the public. So your grade is on hold muna, pending all of those things that you mentioned need to
This
be
one, because
clarified.
it is not PPCRV's role to provide theories on what happened.
Right.
We want to know from the Commission on Elections
The facts.
what happened, the facts, because they own the server.
Right.
And PPCRV and other media groups inside the transparency server room, as well as in the command center, are recipients of data.
Okay. All right, Lito, your views.
Well, the 7-hour data outage, it has greater impact to the stakeholders, in particular the candidates. Okay. Because nobody was seeing it. It would be that after the first transmission, used to be that every 10 or 15 minutes there would be data packages that would be sent out and then they're published. This time around, it was only the first one sent out at 6:05 minutes onwards until about 1:20 in the morning of the following day that we got the packages. One redeeming value there is that at 1:20, when the next package was sent out, it was already at the level of about 90% of about 85 or 86,000
So for
ERs.
people waking up, it felt like
Yes,
it was fast.
but still there was that question on integrity and credibility of the results.
Okay.
Right? So everybody was crying out, tama ba? You know?
Yeah, if I may there. Kasi di ba the reason was may bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, sige. Not being an IT guy myself, but I can understand the concept. But kung from between 1 o'clock and that, na biglang naging 90%, anong bottleneck ang pinagsasabihin nyo na,
No.
na ibuhos yun ang lahat ng ganon?
From what I've gathered thus far, okay, of course all the VCMs transmit, okay, it goes through the transmission system, the telcos, everything, and it got to the different servers like the central server and the transparency server. The data was getting in, but it was not going out. Okay, so the following day news item, Java error. Okay, so the IT community said, it's very general. It could be anything.
Well, to a layman, I mean, who doesn't understand, what is that supposed to mean?
Java is a programming
language.
language.
Yes.
Okay, that's specific to and associated with the Oracle database. That's where all the data gets in, the database. So apparently there was a problem with a program that puts together the data for preparing it for broadcasting to the different recipients. You have the majority party, minority party, KBP, Citizens Arm, okay, and media. Okay. At the point where the data was supposed to be broadcast, that's where the problem occurred.
Now,
Okay.
what does the law say about redundancy, diba, and the design of the system to prevent such things from happening? Because I remember ever since we started using the system, there were repeated assurances that these things will. But I understand there were some factors that were not followable. What was the original design?
The transmission should be from the BCMs
Okay.
to Comelec,
Okay.
server, a transparency server,
Okay.
media server,
Okay.
separate transmissions.
Okay.
What happened here was that they were
Ev-
transmitting to the
everything to the
transparency
transfer.
server, and then that's where the media servers
Would corroborate.
transparency server would push it to the media server.
Okay.
Now, I think when they said that there was a Java error, I don't actually know what they meant by that, but it seems the transparency server could not transmit what it has received to the media server.
Okay.
So that's why there were no reports coming out from the media server.
Right.
Did that affect the integrity of the data?
Not necessarily, not necessarily.
But
you
it's a
see,
question.
Yeah, in elections, the moment there's a blackout in news, then everybody suspects.
Speculate.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
speculate. What happened? Baka nagkakalutuan, That's why.
Oh, yeah, so the question still is, was there any valid ground for such speculation?
Well, sa akin nga, that's why I said earlier that 7-hour glitch, 7 hours that you're not reporting is always,
Raises
suspect.
question.
Right. So if hindsight is 2020, Gus, what should have been the process? Should it have been someone from Comelec giving hourly updates and say we're working on it, even though most of the population is asleep. What should have been done, given that 2020 side?
Well, you said it.
Yeah.
You don't keep quiet.
Okay.
Kasi at 6:15 in the afternoon
Okay.
or early evening, the count was something like 0.38%.
Okay.
And then at 1:15,
90 something.
all of a sudden it's 91%.
Yeah.
So there was that 7-hour blackout. Now, somebody from Comelec should have been explaining what's going on. There are problems. People will understand when you explain. But
Right.
when you're quiet, then
It opens up to
Speculation.
And
questions.
when everybody is supposed to be asleep, remember there are still people who were awake,
Watching.
like Filipinos abroad
Yeah.
who also voted.
right.
Or media.
And relatives, families abroad who were very much
And the
interested in
candidates,
knowing
they won't
what's going
sleep.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you asked about if there were plans, no? The law mandates a continuity plan, but if I were to assess that continuity plan is somewhat lacking in protocol. Remember, recall 2016 with that NIE controversy,
NDS,
right?
yes, yes.
I think they learned and said, okay, everything has to go through the proper approvals by the bank. But I think, that 6-hour period was more administrative rather than technical, solving the technical problem. Because where were the commissioners? Where was the bank? They were supposed to be at the PICC. Everybody's saying PICC. Even the politicians were asking, where are they?
Where were they?
And where were they? We don't know.
No.
Anyway,
That's also blank.
yeah. And not one of them faced media during that whole outage, right? I think there's a lack because I'm a business continuity planner myself,
Okay.
right? The proper protocol would have been identify the problem immediately. If it needs approval within that short period of time, within the first hour, for example, get the approvals if it's necessary, but not necessarily the unbank. Okay, the person on top of the whole system
Right.
should be the first to be apprised, even in disaster situations. Today, For example, the hot thing today is like data privacy and breaches.
Oh.
The breach plan includes that, who to inform, so you have a structured way of addressing the problem.
Okay. Let me take a step back from you, because I remember the day after the elections, the stories are coming out in Manila Times and the others were about hardware. The VCMs not working, as Ms. Malibel was saying, some of the cards not working. Looking forward, anything mechanical will be any mechanical problem will be prone to worsen, over the years. And the next elections is 3 years from now. Are we setting up for a storm here in the next elections?
Well,
And then what do we do now to prevent? Now, in fairness to Comelec, they said they were able to replace most of those machines eventually. Still, right? Moving forward, what on the hardware, the VCM and the cards specifically, what can be done to
Well,
prevent this from
first
being
of
a
all,
factor now?
remember that those machines, those VCMs, are 3 years old.
As of the last elections?
Yeah.
Yes.
They were rented
And then
2010,
bought, yeah.
2013, 2016, and then they decided to buy it December of 2017.
Okay.
So they're now owned by Comelec.
Right.
Now, these machines have rubber parts. That's the rubber rollers, for
Right.
instance, are the ones that make the ballots
Go in.
Feed the
move.
paper
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
yes.
Now, rubber,
Deteriorates.
they crumble when they're old. Di ba?
Yes.
So I don't know if they have they replaced all of those that had defects. But that's the tendency of rubber, just like our rubber shoes.
Okay.
You don't wear them for 3 years, and then the rubber crumbles.
Okay.
So that could have happened with some of them.
Okay.
They were, well, I'll give it to them that they repaired all of this.
Okay.
But then, that something can happen while you're using it.
Okay.
They may not, the defect may not be seen today, but tomorrow, when you're using it already, something might happen.
Okay.
So that's one of the problems that.
Yeah. Another issue there, because now you have the VCMs, but 3 years from now, we will be using those voter recognition machines. It's another set of equipment that could
One of
break
our-
down.
One of our council members said, it's totally useless. And this council member of NAMFREL has a lot of experience in Asia. I mean, he was chairman of the Asian network of
For free elections.
Yeah.
Okay.
Parang ANFREL, no?
Yeah.
Take off from NAMFREL. And he was chairman. And he said, nobody uses VRBMs in Asia.
Okay.
It's a waste of money.
Okay.
What do you accomplish with that?
Okay.
Will the important thing in voters list is that it's complete, that it's inclusive.
Right.
Nobody's disenfranchised. But you
Right.
don't need machines for that.
Yeah.
You need a photo of the voter so that when he comes in, you can see that this is the person who wants to vote.
Right.
So
So-
are you saying the government should not have decided to buy
Yes.
those machines?
That's what I'm saying.
You said that all along.
What was the better option?
Well, we're talking here of the BRBMs, the one that verifies the
Identity.
identification, the identity of the voter. And we're saying that it's useless. I mean, we spent a lot of money. We spent 1.1 billion for those machines, which does not really accomplish anything. Now, regarding the VCMs, I've always taken the position that we don't need those machines.
Okay.
That the counting at the precinct level should be manual, and then transmit electronically, and canvass should be automated. But voting should be transparent, or rather, the counting should be transparent to the voters. It should be witnessed and understood by the voters. That's why in many parts of the world, they went back from automated to manual.
In some of your previous columns, I think you mentioned Germany.
Germany, Netherlands, Ireland, they went back to manual
But
counting.
a lot of people, kasi when they hear the word manual, they think of the old system. But that's not what you mean.
No, no.
What you mean to say was manual at the precinct, but automated canvassing.
Correct.
Can you give I mean compared to the old system a comparison lang on how might that go about, and how much shorter would that be in completing the process from when the precinct closes up to the canvassing?
Manual counting takes only 1 day at the most. Usually just overnight. The following morning, it's done.
Okay.
So that's part of a day.
Okay.
You know? But it's transparent, and that's
Okay.
what's important.
Okay.
In Germany, for example, they said that it's unconstitutional not to allow the voters to witness the counting.
Okay.
So it's not just the transparency angle, but also the constitutionality of the process.
Okay.
And so that should be, and I wrote a monograph about this.
Yes.
I said that so it does not delay things, the process. Have a laptop in the precincts, and while the manual counting is going on, do a laptop count as well.
Okay.
So at the end of the counting, the laptop can transmit
Okay.
the data for canvassing.
Okay.
So there's no delay.
Okay.
And then the laptops, we might say, well, laptop might be as costly as the VCMs, except that the laptops can go to the Department of Education, can be sold to them.
Could go
at
to
a
the school
discount,
or
go to the schools. Whereas a VCM is a one-use machine. I mean, you can only use it for vote counting,
Right.
unlike a laptop that can be used for.
So-
It's a general purpose machine.
So from your definition, the 7-hour glitch could be considered a violation of the Constitution from your definition.
Well, if something happens, it's difficult to say it's your fault. No? That's why there's a delay. But if something goes wrong with the machine, then it's probably not. You don't necessarily say that it's the fault of the administrators. No?
What is your view on that? How would you now regard this factual reality? It really happened that there was a 7-hour glitch. Was that unconstitutional? Would you act on it? What action would you take on that?
Well, the mandate of PP survey has always been voter sample watching and unofficial parallel count. When you do a post-mortem, moving forward, what can be done for
Yes.
2022? You have to deconstruct the whole process, meaning to say the whole elections. Then you would have to look at the election management system. You would have to look at the environment. You would have to look at the resources. And COMELEC needs to be able to provide a report on that.
Okay.
Were their resources enough for the server to be able to give out the data that it was supposed to give out? Meaning to say that it was unable to accomplish its task. It was getting data, but at the same time not giving it out to PP survey, to the media. So what went wrong? They have to answer that. The same thing as mentioned by Mr. Gasman.
Gas.
Gus, okay,
Gus,
by
correct.
Gus. It's a 3-year-old machine. So meaning to say when you do a final testing and sealing, they would print out, they would test it and have 10 ballots. But you're talking about,
Random, yeah.
but you're talking to find out the whether it's working or not. But you're talking about a clustered precinct which has about 800 to 1,000 voters. Can the machine be able to, for example, be able to have the capacity to be able to print out and take in about 800 to 1,000 votes? What we're saying is that we cannot make a conclusion until we get the answers to the questions that we had posed to the Commission on
but
Election.
am I correct in saying that PPCRV has a different view of the current system that we're using? I know there's some differences. I got the impression that PPCRV is comfortable with the Smartmatic system. Is that the correct
No, it's
opinion?
not. I'm not. We work with the givens.
Okay.
Meaning to say, when I monitored and observed the Bangsamoro plebiscite,
Okay.
on January 21, I was in Cotabato and in Maguindanao. It was manual.
Okay.
So we work with the givens. If Congress mandates an AES, if the government says that, we will work with what the government. We're not what the government
You don't
says.
recommend
We
or
don't.
you don't
If they-
critique? or-
No, meaning to
But
say.
certainly you're consulted, right?
But we are consulted, but at the same time, we work with observations, as you've mentioned. We want to be able to address. Hopefully, the system would address not only the retail cheating, but the wholesale cheating both as well. And we don't want to have a repeat of the Dagdag Bawas. Let's not
Right,
go back to
right.
that, the 2004 incident. But again, we work on the givens. The given was that it was AES in 2019.
Yeah.
Whatever is the given in 2022, we will work with that.
Right.
We are volunteer driven. We work with whatever environment is laid out in front of us. And as I have mentioned, there are two things which will be able to hopefully address some of the qualms and the doubts. You have the electronically transmitted ERs. There are two things to verify that. We have the physical validation and coding and validation. We have the physical VVPAT. You also have the random manual audit, which Lenti is doing, 715. So that when that is done, and you make a post-mortem analysis of, do the physical election returns match the electronic transmitted one? So on. Do the random manual audit results match those with that? Until we have those
Right.
results, then we can
Right.
mention whether ano ba nangyari.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, there are still questions that need to be
Right.
answered by the Commission on Elections. We have already requested that. We have our findings. Now, I guess the public needs to know.
Yeah.
Then the public needs to be addressed.
Right. Can I move on to a slightly different issue? Because there was another story that appeared in the media, also in the Times, about the paper itself. And I think one of our banner stories was the National Printing Office threatening to, or was threatened.
Hindi sila babayaran.
Hindi sila babayaran by Comelec
Kasi
because
na-outsource
they
nila.
had reportedly outsourced the paper printing to another company. But how serious is that, or is that a minor thing? I mean, from an expert's point of view, how critical is paper?
Yeah. That I think is the issue on the voter information sheet,
Okay.
which are supposed to be delivered to the voters like a month before the elections.
Okay.
The voter information sheet contains information as to where you will vote, your
Okay.
voting precinct.
Okay.
And then it's supposed to include a list of candidates for different positions in your district.
Okay.
And there are instructions on how to vote.
Right.
The reports that we gathered saying that there was an error in printing, and they're blaming the printer for the printing errors.
Yes, because we saw on live TV former Makati mayor having problems, feeding I think Grace Poe also had to return at another time because originally there were problems with the printer. So,
But that's another issue. That's the paper for the
how,
ballots.
how important is the paper? Is that a critical? I know for publishers, we are very careful how we store paper, but we're talking about big machines. But for this technology, how critical is it if it's a different thickness or different quality? Does that make any difference at all, or
In that, you have to pair it also with the issue of the marker pens.
the marker pens?
Yeah,
Yes.
which happened also because there was a lot
There
of
were
reports on
insufficient.
bleed through.
Oh, okay.
Meaning you mark on one
It-
side
it
and
shows
will
on the other
shows
side.
on the other side.
Yeah.
But the way the ballot is designed is that the circles or the ovals do not correspond to each other, front and
Okay.
back. So
Okay.
that shouldn't be a problem. The bigger problem is when there's paper jams. They do happen with machines like the VCM.
Yeah.
know,
Well,
if-
because of the rollers, you said, but
Yeah.
are there other? I mean, can the paper be blamed itself? Can we or
Well, again, we have
We
to
don't
assess.
know.
Yeah, we have to assess the quality of the paper. But then again, at bidding time, for example, they have specifications at bidding time,
yeah,
right? Both for the paper and the pen.
yeah.
Right.
But what does the law say? Because NPO was saying that are they correct when they said that the law says that they should be informed or Comelec should be informed if they will outsource any of the printing?
Well, you're mixing the issues, Clint.
Okay, all right.
One is about the VIS or the voter information
Yeah.
sheet. The other one is about the printing of the ballots.
Yeah.
I think the issue on
NPO.
outsourcing
Yeah.
came about with the VIS.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so apparently the contract for printing the VIS was given to NPO. NPO outsourced it to a
Okay.
private company,
Okay.
and the Comelec was not informed. So that's what they're
That's the
crying
issue.
about. That's
Okay.
the issue there.
Okay.
With regards to the ballot, that's long been settled, no? Because
Okay.
it was a different printing activity.
Okay.
And apparently, all the ballots, each one of them, was tested at the NPO before they were packed
So
and
no
shipped.
issue there. Yeah.
No issue there.
Except you said the pens.
Yes, the issue now, the issue that arose during the voting, okay, with the pens, that caused bleed through on the paper. And the problems encountered in these elections, actually they manifested themselves in the overseas absentee voting, because they started voting a month ahead. So they had problems with the VCM, problems with the SD cards, and problems with the paper and pen.
Okay.
By the way, we were talking about the VIS, Voter Information System. I don't think I ever got a copy. Did you get a copy?
I didn't
Never
really-
in my
No.
whole registered voter life.
Two things. Two things. One, yung sa VIS kasi sinasabi nila, bawal daw is i-outsource. Is that true?
I wouldn't know. Under the procurement law, I wouldn't know. I'm not gonna lie.
Then go, okay. So that's an issue that has to be settled by the Comelec.
Okay.
But with regards to procurement, ito rin yung sinasabi ng Comelec na kaya tayo nagkabulilyaso sa papel, sa ballots, sa pens, dahil under the procurement law, kailangan separate contracts na yan. Diba, hindi daw tulad nung dati na pakete, buo sa Smartmatic na lahat yung ano yon.
Isang
So
supplier.
they all know the specs for everything, so all systems mesh. And with this na iba yung nagbigay ng papel, iba yung nagbigay ng pangsulat, iba nagbigay ng makina, hindi ngayon nagano. Is that valid?
But then again, I would say, didn't we learn about the specifications since 2010? What type of paper should we get?
I know you were saying
What
that
type of
tama
pen
yung specs
should we
dapat.
get? But the more glaring issue on the procurement is that the Comelec said that the reason why we're in trouble now is that we got the lowest bid. It should not always be the lowest bid, right? It should be the lowest calculated responsive bid, meaning it's low in price
But means
plus
the, ano,
responsive, meeting the criteria for which you are purchasing something.
Well, when you have a bidding, usually there's a pre-qualification process, right? I mean,
Yes.
So I suppose.
And
that
then there's
was-
a post-qual stage.
Right, and I suppose that was not done because there was precisely because there was no bidding,
The
or
pre-qual is just the company, no?
Yeah, pre-qualification is weeding out, companies. Post-qualification is like testing it, the quality of the products. But again, the procurement law is there to guide government, right? And I gathered some procurement there. They said we were out of time. Time and time again, that's the same reason.
Last minute.
Last minute procurement, right? Although it's included in their whole election calendar when to buy something. And we actually send a representative just to monitor the process.
so what went wrong?
We don't. they have they have to check their procurement process. Who messed up? Who missed the post qualification stage, for example? We don't know.
Because there were some precincts that only had one pen. I think,
Yeah.
not very many, but I don't know if it's enough to impact the results. But there was certainly an inconvenience to some people.
You know, many of my friends are asking me, this is the fourth time they're going to run automated elections. Why is this happening?
Right.
The more highlighted technical problem was what happened with former Vice President Binay with the VCM, right? It took him, I think, more than 4 times for his
Eight-
to
nearly
go
eight
through.
things.
The ballot, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, to go through the VCM.
In fact, I think he had to come back or something.
He had to come
Yes.
Yeah,
back.
because
Yes. Yeah.
his ballot was replaced.
Yeah.
So that reinforces even more
Yeah.
your argument against these machines.
That's what I was saying. Well, by the way, why are we here this morning?
Yeah.
Because we're discussing this automated system.
Yeah.
So it's a problem.
Right.
There are so many problems with this automated system. VCMs malfunctioning, SD cards malfunctioning. If we just voted manually, first of all, the ballot would be shorter.
Okay.
Because we just write the names. No,
Right.
Not that's so long.
Right.
And then there won't be too many questions like we have now. They're
Right.
saying, it takes so long. It takes only overnight to count manually.
Right.
And then the rest automated.
Right. I know in previous years he even went so far as to come up with a study comparing how much cheaper it would be to use either desktops or laptops. Do you remember how much cheaper that would have been? I know that was
Well,
many years ago.
Yeah, this was the VCMs cost something like 10 billion pesos.
Right.
And my calculation is that if we were to buy the laptops,
Right.
I think it would cost something like 4 billion or less.
Okay.
And then not only that, the laptops you can donate or
Leave it with the
sell-
school, yeah.
or give to the schools.
Well, let me take a devil's advocate here. I mean, for people who are not so technical,
Mm.
I mean, aren't machines machines? I mean, if this particular machine is prone to heat and other problems, I mean, couldn't we say the same thing about desktops and laptops as you're saying, or enlighten us a little bit? Or is it better because it would be new every time? You're saying that every time we have elections, it would be brand new,
All
right?
laptops don't have, hardly any
Moving parts. Okay.
Unlike the VCMs, where
Right.
you have these rubber rollers. So there are more parts that can malfunction.
Okay.
Unlike a laptop. I mean, you carry your laptop everywhere,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And, nothing
And sometimes
really
you don't treat it so.
nothing really happens. I mean,
Right.
I do the same. And what's more is after the elections, like I said, you can donate or sell them to the Department of Education.
Right.
Then 3 years later, buy another
Another set.
of laptop. So you're always buying something
Replenishing
new.
the school.
Yeah. And the cost would be the same as what you're doing now, or much less actually.
With the VCMs, what's the life? Kasi kung 4 billion every 3 years, the costs mount up. 10 billion for a set of VCMs, how long are we supposed to be using that set?
Well, right now they're using it for the second time, and they're encountering a lot of problems. So I'd say maybe you can only use it once, because now there are moving parts, there are rubber parts.
Let's look at also the previous machine, the PICOS,
Oh, yeah.
which is essentially the same
The
machine,
same, yeah.
but different models. Okay.
Okay.
After the 2010 elections, the commission exercised the option to purchase and bought the PICOS, used it in
13
2013.
and then junked it.
No? The promise was we can use it for 2016, 2019. But the last time it was used was in 2013.
Okay. So that should have taught us something already.
Yes.
Yeah, considering that, especially because the fourth industrial revolution is unfolding, don't we, as a democracy, want to also improve our systems of democratic processes such as an election? For sure, we cannot imagine a nation moving forward and holding elections manually? I mean, amid all these technological advances and revolution that's going on?
That's what most countries use. Manual at the presents. Because you need the transparency. People must see the counting at the presents. Beyond the present, it's all automated. So there's your, there's your technology working.
From your assessment, at what level did the defects and flaws expose themselves? Was it in the actual voting, the actual the accomplishment of the voters'
Canvassing.
forms, or
Well-
was it in the canvassing and the transmission?
Well, in this case, we're using VCMs. At the VCM level, there were already a lot of failures. So the moment you feed that ballot into the machine, you also don't see what's happening. So it's like, in my earlier analogy, it's like giving it, you're putting it slot into a locked room and you don't know what's going to happen there. Unlike in previous elections where you see your votes being counted. Now, in previous elections, what's bad is that everything was manual all the way to canvassing. What we're saying here is manual at the precinct level and then automate the rest of the way. And it's many countries are doing it that way.
Let me give my 2 cents worth for that. With the problems with the machines, we also look at the impact to the voters. Right? Right off in pilot areas where the VRVMs were used. Okay, the electoral board, it has been renamed to the electoral board, defaulted on the use of the VRVMs rather than the voters list. So right there, if you were having difficulty verifying the identity of the voters, you were creating a line already. Then the next one is going to the BEI. There were cases reported where the machine already gave a receipt to the voter presented it to the BEI or the electoral board, and the electoral board asked the voter, what's your sequence number in the list? Okay, so the voter has to step out of the room, check the list outside the room, and then get back. That's another step, right? The other problem with the machine breaks down. Again, you have queues on the, and it took like forever to wait for the replacement machines or the SD cards. As late as Friday, for example, okay, our volunteers on the ground in Zamboanga, a volunteer reported, we finally got the replacement SD cards. And this was like late in the afternoon, or early evening, okay? And then he said, we're now taking the speedboat to Lamitan. Well, that's kind of dangerous in that area, right? So it's the impact to the voters, it's the impact to the stakeholders on the ground. But it's very difficult to quantify because once you have a queue, okay, and people leave the queue, you don't count them, right? We don't even know if some of them came back to vote.
What are your thoughts about, in this election, they extended the voting hours to 6 p.m. Did that turn out to be a good idea, or would it be needed, if it were
7 o'clock?
6
to
to
6?
6.
It was 6 to 6.
I'm
It
sorry.
was 6 to
Yeah,
6.
6 to 6.
Well, I suppose under your manual voting at the precinct, would it be shorter? I mean, certainly would it take 12 hours at the precinct?
Maybe shorter or maybe the same, but you
It
see,
won't matter.
the voting period was never a problem.
Okay.
In other words, whether it's manual or automated, the voting period was never a problem. There was enough time. And people, they have a tendency to go there early.
Okay.
I for
Yeah.
one, I go to first
Very
hour,
early,
second
yeah.
hour,
Yeah.
the latest, no?
Yeah.
And so the
Not
problem
an issue.
starts during the counting
Right.
process.
Right.
So, overall, are we able to give a thumbs up or thumbs down?
Well,
You're asking
Not
me.
yet.
PCRD is too early.
early,
I think
not
we
yet.
know where Gus and Lito stand
No,
on
it's not done yet.
on that. No. But again, looking forward, this will be the second part of President Duterte's term. I mean, how important is it to put all of these corrective measures maybe as a legacy for this administration, or I guess forget Duterte, but for any administration? I mean, among all of the priorities, all of the problems that the country has, how significant is this issue?
You know, you can easily remove all these problems and suspicions. Just make the voting and the counting manual. And then we won't have problems. I mean, very few problems probably.
Right.
And just transmit the election returns
Right.
electronically. And then automated canvassing.
Right.
So,
Well, would
very few questions.
would
will arise.
would you know the telco infrastructure be an issue here also, as it is now, and of course the speed of the internet. I mean, which is also an issue now, and those are, I suppose, going to get better in the future. But you know, how much better do you think in the next 3
We can
years
even assume
when
that-
we have the elections?
We can even assume that telecommunications would be the same whether it's manual at precinct level or
Okay.
automated, because you're talking of the communication lines.
Right.
So the problem is not there.
Okay.
In the well, there are problems. There are
Right.
areas in the Philippines which are problematic
Right.
when it comes to telecoms. But
Right.
whether it's manual voting or automated,
It's
that
the
would
same.
be the same.
Although this time, I should give credit where credit is due.
Okay.
You know, because of the transmission. Like again, when the transparency survey resumed, we already had about 91% of the election returns, and then within the week from election day until yesterday, last night, they completed all election returns. Right, so it's better than previous. See, in 2010, like close to 9% was not transmitted. In 2013, it was even worse at 24%.
24?
And then last year was close to 4%. Or last elections was close to 4%.
So
This
that-
time around,
So there's some redeeming.
Yeah, so,
But you see, again, we never found out what happened to the 23% in 2013 to the 3 to 4%
well,
in
the
2016.
COMELEC then came out with a group canvas, but that has no legal basis.
And that's a new term actually, group canvas, whatever that means.
Well, Gus, you know, you were part of COMELEC before. Maybe give us an insight on maybe the dynamics there on in there. I know you're dropped for other political reasons, but
Well, first of all, there were
What
no
are the
elections.
challenges
I
there?
was
Is
only
it-
there for 13 months.
yes. What were the challenges you think that if we were to
There
put
were
some?
no elections during my time,
Oh yeah.
because I was there 2011 up to June 2012, and elections were 2010, then 2013. So I was right there
smack
in the
in the
middle,
middle, yeah.
no election. So
Right.
I never had any problems. Well, of course, there were some issues where I did not agree with the rest, but that's okay. 6-1 is not. In most of the voting, it was 6-1. I was the one. Like, oh yeah, when I was there, I had the IT group develop our own, COMELEC's own canvassing and consolidation and canvassing system. And it was done. It was tested. And so I announced it to the unbanked. And they said, no, we can't use it.
Well, let me be more specific. I mean, most of the people there are lawyers, right?
They were all lawyers,
Yes.
except for me.
So, I mean, when we talk about fixes, improving the system, we're talking about technology. I mean, maybe a totally alien world to lawyers. But so how was it? How easy was it to convince them to explain to them all of these tech? Are they well studied enough? You think that they're
Well,
comfortable? Based
Probably
on your
not.
time. Based on your time. Of
Probably
course.
not, or maybe it's also intentional.
Okay.
don't. But let me continue that story. I had a consolidation and canvassing system developed by the IT staff of Comelec with the help of a couple of people from DOST, and they were able to do it. That used to cost 58 million
Okay.
when it was done by Smartmatic.
Right.
We only spent about 600,000 pesos because we had to get contractual people and from DOST as well. We had to compensate DOST. But it was done, and then I presented it to the Unbank. I said, we now have our CCS, Consolidation and Canvassing System. And then the chairman said, we can't use it.
Okay.
He preferred using the Smartmatic system. And so I was aghast. I said, why? We can't use it because I can't remember. Oh, I think they use the reason that
That been
it
used.
has to be procured. Well, it has to be procured? You mean we can't do it ourselves? So I lost. That was 6-1.
So, I mean, do you think it's a good idea to have a non-lawyer, a technical person, on as soon as there is an opening? Is that a merited?
I think I wrote
suppose
an article
yeah.
for Manila Times some years
Yeah.
back where I
Yeah.
said there are 7 commissioners
Yeah.
in the commission in Comelec. Maybe 4 can be lawyers
Yeah.
to take care of the adjudication
Right.
of protests.
Right.
The 3 maybe should be technical,
Systems guys.
IT, and management people.
Okay.
And let those 3 administer the conduct of elections. Because that needs management, that needs IT skills.
Right.
So it would be a very good combination.
Good mix.
actually. Yeah.
So of course, assuming that all of these people are upstanding citizens and
I-
truth tellers, and right. So it would be good to have a mix.
As we try to wrap up?
Yeah, sure. Neri, why don't you give us the latest count that
Well,
that's-
just
that's,
to reinforce what Mr. Tito Aguirre here was saying earlier, we give credit to where credit is due. And for technology, it played a vital role also in this election, despite some unfavorable observations that you all expressed. But as of now, or as of maybe around 10 o'clock this morning, we already got the final official tally. No more updates are expected after this. These are the final.
and today is the 22nd
figures.
for those watching it online.
Yeah.
So what are they? Let's start from the.
From the number of registered voters, we had officially 63,643,263. And voters who actually voted numbered 47,296,442. So that turnout is about 74.3%.
Wow.
Higher than in
Well,
the past.
I thought it was higher. But,
2016?
well, we usually reach up to 78-80%
80%,
in previous election. But then this is midterm, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Presidential.
So it's still okay at
I think so.
74.3%.
In the US, it's 40%.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the
Top 12.
official top 12 list did not really change much from the previous partial official results that we've already shown on the newspaper front page and on TV as well. With Cynthia Villar still leading with 25,283,727, and Grace Poe with 22,029,788, Bongo with 20,657,702, Pia Cayetano has 19,789,019, Bato de la Rosa garnered 19,000,000 4,225. And Angara at number 6, Sonny Angara, with 18,161,862. Lito Lapid has 16,965,464. Aimee Marcos, 15,882,628. Francis Tolentino, 15,510,026. Coco Pimentel has 14,668,665. Bong Revilla at number 11, 14,624,445. And finally, Nancy Binay with 14,504,936.
Well, there you have it. I'd ask you what your thoughts are here, but I think that's for another roundtable discussion. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I hope we can call you back again.
Yes,
when there is a
definitely.
clear picture, I suppose,
We have
when
the
the smoke clears
all-
from the comment.
Hours
Yeah,
encoded.
right.
And
Thank you.
maybe you could give a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
By then, yeah,
By then.
yeah. Thank you, and good morning to all.
Salamat.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Uy, salamat, sir.
Yes, yes, yes.
Sige.
Guys, hindi na Mr. Lagman, ha?
Hindi na.
Sir,
Yeah.
salamat.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Ororio,